Hey, what's up, guys? It's METAGAMESGX here, and we are going to be checking out a gameplay, of course, against Sky Striker in the new Justice Hunters format with branded Dracotail. So I'm going to be going first, and as you guys know, Sky Striker is great at breaking boards, so we're going to have a great game one here. I kind of want to go through what I could have maybe done better, and then also just like what you guys have to do in these grind games, because this is a perfect example of how to grind with branded, in my opinion, because there are a lot of just different routes with this deck that a lot of the time you can just outgrind your opponent with branded. So I wanted to show you guys with that, with one of the grindiest decks in the whole game. So our opponent starts off with the linkage with the Rose, multi-roll, Fuelos, and Called By. So this is a pretty strong going second hand against my deck because Called By already checks one of my, power spells. But I do open the Flame, which does check the Called By at least. And so, but he has so many spells, I might just have to use it on something else. And then I do have the Rahu Dracotail plus the Quem and the Shrouded and the Fallen of Albaz. But the Fuelos is going to make it kind of hard to do what I want to do because this is a really good hand. But, like, if I get Fuelos here... Also, like, I'm surprised he didn't just chain the Fuelos here. Because if he sees I'm unshrouded, like, I could obviously just draw a Called By at this point, which I don't. I'm siding a Called By at this point, but that's totally fine. And so I'm going to then go into the Lubellion here, search out the Saronir, because I've already droll checked him, right? And Saronir is just, like, great with Rahu Dracotail. And at this point, though, I already have Retribution in the graveyard. So at this point, like, I could just go Rahu Dracotail, but I'm trying to play around Fuelos on some level. So I felt like going Quem here would bait out Imperm, bait out hand traps, and then, so I'm going to go into the Quem effect to then send the branded fusion immediately, just chain the branded Retribution right there so that I can get the branded fusion back to my hand. And I'm going to just try to do the branded fusion because honestly, if he does ash my branded fusion, that's kind of fine in this situation because I have the Lubellion, I have the Saronir, I have Rahu, so I can get the branded lost anyway with the Dracotail stuff and do my branded stuff anyway. So that was my logic with that. Maybe some people would start Rahu here to, like, bait the Ash Blossom, but I'm not sure personally. But he does have the Fuelos, and since I already have the Dracotail Flame and I don't have another Dracotail trap in my deck, so I didn't see really a point. I send the Albaz and Cartesia to make the Sanctifier, which is just like the easiest line when I have a Quem, especially because then the Quem can just revive a Cartesia. I meant to target the Cartesia, that was a misclick. And he draws the Ray for the Fuelos draw, so it's, like, I guess fine. I mean, that's pretty good for him because before that his hand wasn't looking too great. But now I'm just deciding what to do here. I'm just going to go into the Saronir here, start baiting more hand traps, or at least establish a branded lost. I contribute over the Saronir for the Lubellion, and here I misplay. I do go the Saronir, which is correct. I send the branded opening since I already have the branded Retribution out of rotation, so opening's the next best thing to send off a Saronir to prevent any destruction on my monsters. And here I should go branded lost. I did a big thing here because of the lag. There was a big lag, so I completely forgot to go branded lost here, which is one of my biggest misplays of this game for sure. And then I fuse off the Albaz plus the Cartesia because I figured I'd give him 1+ draw, and then I check him on the Called By with, like, Dracotail Flame, and I still lock him. And here I decide if I need to go into the Albion or just send the Ido here. I actually think I would have been a lot better just sending the Ido, but instead I actually just send the Albion, the branded dragon here, because I figured that will get me back the Cartesia, but the issue is that you guys will see. But now I go the Lubellion, so I should have the Mercurier here. So learn from my mistakes, but that's just, like, obviously one of those things with time, like, I just didn't do it correctly, but we still have a really strong board anyway under Fuelos with the Quem plus the Sanctifier, and then branded lost set up with Albaz and Cartesia with the Albion, the red in the end phase. So now I go red into Brandon and red. And then I go into the Cartesia, back to hand. And here I should be ending with a Mercurier, all things considered, but at least it's Striker, so I don't think my misplay costed me too much here. I mean, it kind of did, it kind of didn't, because I feel like the Mercurier would have made my job a lot easier, but we're going to get into an insane grind game because of it. So he starts with Feather Duster, and of course I just decide to use Dracotail Flame here because I can just immediately negate that, but he does have the linkage, so he can chain and send the droplet or the duster so that the Dracotail flame can no longer be negating it since flame targets. And so I'm going to have to chain the branded in red here so that I don't get this destroyed, and then get the Albaz back to hand so I can fuse. And then he chains the called by here on the Albaz, but then I chain the Sanctifier to play around the called by, which is one of Sanctifier's best uses. And I target the Albaz plus the Saronir, and then I misclick on that, and then I summon out the Albaz off the Sanctifier, give him the Saronir so I can have something to fuse off. And then he decides to send the Saronir off of the linkage at this point since all my back row is used. So I get to keep the branded lost, and now I go Fallen of Albaz, fuse off the Kagari. But he does have the Widow Anchor here, and that's going to obviously be a little bit of an issue. And I do have Chainlink to... You might ask why I didn't trigger Quem, because like the Albion wasn't properly summoned. I discarded the Cartesia off of the Albaz, so I wouldn't have been able to trigger Quem here. I have to wait for the next chain to trigger the Quem. And he does have the Widow Anchor here to negate and take the Albaz, so that's pretty good. And then here I just send the High Spirits off of the Saronir for my grind game so I can have some more cards to crack back with. And now he's going to be able to go into my board. And now he goes into the Hayate here. I get to trigger the Quem. And now here I decide to go into the Cartesia. I can just chain the Cartesia here. I could have gone into the Secretarion, but there wouldn't have been too much of a point. I kind of wish I had a Dracotail card at this point. I'm basically just playing pure branded this game. So I go out to the Grand Guignol. Grand Guignol's going to send me the Rinbrum. Here I should have definitely sent like Titanclad, I think, because it gets me the same thing. But yeah, it is what it is. Or then he attacks over the Hayate, crashes it, sends the Ray, and then Ray's going to be able to chain its effect. And then he goes into main 2 to play around my Guignol, and then goes into the Azalea, and then Azalea effect pop the branded loss, and then he goes into the linkage. Linkage effect is going to link off, or obviously send off the Azalea to special summon out the Zero, which is their brand new boss monster out of Duelist Advanced. That is very good. It allows them to unlink or special summon, add one Sky Striker spell from the deck or graveyard to hand, and then you can quick effect tribute it, and then special summon a Ray and a Rose from deck or graveyard, and then you can pop a card on the field non-targeting, so it's very good. Obviously, I've already used Albaz at this point too, so like my Rinbrum in graveyard isn't doing a whole lot here at this point. He does go into Engage. Engage is going to be able to get him the Lemnis Gate, which is a very broken card. Target an equal number of Sky Striker Ace monsters and Striker spells in your graveyard. Shuffle them into the deck, and then for every 3 shuffled cards, you can return up to 1 card on the field to the hand. And then it has a good graveyard effect that lets you link summon, so on your opponent's turn, which is pretty cool. And so he goes Engage, draws a Fuvalos. That's not very good, and here he just goes, activates the multi-roll, and then activates the Rose. I just go Rinbrum here to summon out the Albaz. And then he links off the Rose for the Shizuku. And then Shizuku goes into the end phase so that I can use its effect. And then he chains the Lemnis Gate to then banish 6 of his striker cards from his graveyard. 3 monsters, 3 spells, so they can return up to 2 cards on the board. And it's non-targeting, so he can actually return the Sanctifier here, which is pretty crazy since Sanctifier is you can't target it. And then he had to return his own Shizuku, which is kind of interesting. I guess he had to do that to clear his main monster zone, so he could use his striker spells, so I guess that's okay. And then he adds Shark Cannon. He's able to use Shark Cannon, banish the Cartesia, so I don't get back to hand, which is smart to kill my grind game, but I do still have the High Spirits. And I do have the Rahu, so and he is able to actually just set Shark Cannon off the multi-roll anyway, so he does get that back. And then I get the High Spirits back, and now I do all I had to do is top deck a monster, frankly, and then I basically win the game from here, because I think a single Rahu like breaks this whole board. Like Striker isn't that really, like, it doesn't have a super high ceiling, it just has a really good grind game, I think. And Rahu Drake, I mean, now it has a turn 1 board with the 0, but I just think having the Rahu plus a monster here, especially Tragedy, which Tragedy just gets me back to Branded Fusion, is just crazy. So I just send the Tragedy and then send the Urgula, and then I'm able to go Chainlink 1 Altharion to get back the Saronir so I can activate the Branded and High Spirits, which is pretty cool. And then I go Chainlink 2 Urgula, and here he goes Shark Cannon effect to target the Saronir, so I'm not able to add it back to hand, which is pretty smart since he knows I have High Spirits. And then I search the Aluber off of the Tragedy, and then I go Ketu here off of the Urgula, and then I pop his multi-roll. So I search the Aluber here, even though I have Branded Fusion engraved, because I can get Aluber into Branded and White, which basically does the same exact thing. So here I'm able to go Ketu, though, because he does have 2 monsters on board, so it forces his 0 here to pop a card. So 0 is going to be able to special summon out Ray and Rose and then pop my Ketu, so that's sad, but at least I can use the Gwignall effect to trigger off the 0. And now Gwignall can get me into the Quem, my last Quem in the deck, and this is showing the grind game of Branded when you run the 2 Quem. Like, I've already gone through my first Quem, I needed the second, I mean, I didn't need the second Quem here, but it's nice to have it. So now Quem can just send the Cartesia, and since he banished my first one, now I can go into the Aluber effect, get the Branded in White, and here it's just kind of like over from here. I mean, he does have the Ray interruption, but he's already used his 0 pop, so it's not a whole lot. And then now I go Branded in White, sending Albaz to the graveyard. It only banishes when Albaz is in the graveyard, so I can just send... I'm thinking here between the Altharion or the Grand Gwignall. I'm not sure, though. You guys tell me down below what would have been a better send, because I send the Altharion, but it could have been Grand Gwignall. I just figured Altharion was better because it can come back and Grand Gwignall can't. But this is technically bigger, so if I miss OTK because I didn't save this, that would have been my fault. I do get the Quem effect to get the Fallen of Albaz, though, since I haven't used Albaz this turn, so I can now break his board. And he does chain the Ray here, and that lets him special summon out the Kagari. I do go Chainlink 1 Albaz, though, to discard the High Spirits. He goes Chainlink 2 Kagari to add back a Striker spell, which is the Lemnis Gate. And then the, he targets the multi-roll, and then he chains Lemnis Gate because if a Sky Striker monster is special summoned to your field while this card is in your graveyard, you can banish this card immediately after this resolves. Link summon 1 Sky Striker Ace Link monster. So he's going to be able to do more things. I'm like, he's probably going to go into Zeke here, right, to pop a card, but he goes into Kaina, which is interesting. And then I am able to fuse off with the Saronir, since that is a dragon plus Albaz. It's always pretty good to give your opponent a target off a Saronir you can fuse off with, you know, Sanctifier. That's why I targeted the Saronir in the first place. And so I'm able to go into the Chaos Star Source, since it was the only thing I could really make here. If I had Borreload, I guess this would have been fine here too. And then I pop the Kaina, and then Kaina is going to be able to use its trigger effect on special summon to target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, and making it not be able to attack until the end of the turn. And so he's going to target my Mirror Jade, which is my biggest body, but I still just have enough for game at this point. So at this point, I just send another Branded opening off the Saronir that he was able to, or I was able to fuse off. So I just like, I'm doing like perfect Saronir control. I'm triggering Saronir on like all 3 turns, so I have more cards in rotation. If he was popping my cards, it would have really mattered. Or if I had like double Retribution, for instance, it would have been so good. And like a game like this makes me want to run double Retribution, but also not every deck grinds like Striker does. So he is able to go into the Ray here, though, since the Kaina left. And then he is going to go into the... But this is totally fine, because then I just make all my monsters attack, and I banish with the Mirror Jade, even though it can't attack, and it can still use its effect. So I send the Albion here, even though the Albion isn't really getting me a whole lot. I guess Albion could get me actually a High Spirits bridge to search out Mercurier, but I already have both Gwignalls in rotation, right? So I can't really do that. So now I just attack for a pure 8k, because of 2500 plus 15 plus 25, and then 325 and plus another 1800. So yeah, we just like go for game right there. Now we go into game 2. I draw Branded High Spirits, should all fusion. That grass looks greener. Fusion deployment, should all fusion. Our opponent draws Hornet Drones, Triple Tactics Thrust, Lemnis Gate, Druid Swarm, and Ray. So he does have a decent hand for going first. And I have a pretty good hand for board breaking, but not having a monster for high spirits kind of sucks. So he goes into the Hornet Drone, summons Kagari to get back the Hornet Drones. This is basically the Yummy combo, except they're also able to do this for Striker, so they can go into 0 for free and then get the Engage Search, and now he gets to go into Engage, search the Widow Anchor, and then isn't able to loop the Engage, which is crazy, so he sets Lemniscape plus Widow Anchor with Draw Swarm in hand, so that's pretty good. I do start the turn with Shaddoll Fusion, though, because it forces out his interactions, because he does have an extra deck card, and he doesn't know yet if I'm running the pop, right? I could be running the Wind with the pop, I could be running anything, I could be running the Spell and Trap. I mean, it's so common for the Urgala, so when you see a Shaddoll Fusion, you should expect your back row to get basically blown out. But he does chain the 0 here, which surprised me because this was still one of his only interruption pieces, so I'm just getting rid of it now, which is really nice. And then he decides to pop the Rose, which is interesting, because you can choose not to, but I guess this gets into the graveyard for its effect. And then I'm not able to resolve the Shaddoll Fusion anymore because there is no longer an extra deck card on the board, which is kind of crazy. I didn't even realize that, but yeah, no, that's exactly what happened there. So I'm able to go, Next, I go into the Grasslick Screener because I figured this would be the next best way to break the board. I don't really like going Grass after going, like, Deployment Opening. Like, Grass forces so much, and it also is just such a good card. It forces the Ash, and if he doesn't have Ash, then I just get so much advantage. So, yeah, I just end up milling so much here. I mill 23, I believe. So, yeah, this is why Grass is great in Branded. I don't know. Some people don't like Grass in Branded, but I end up milling Tragedy, Retribution, Aluber, which is my only Aluber, so that kind of sucks, and my only Quem because I sided out one Quem going second, which is what you should not do. And I also mill the Shaddoll Beast, so I get to draw a card, and I get some Dracotails in the graveyard, which is never a bad thing with Femina. I wish I had the Urgala in rotation, but I did not. So here I just triggered the Tragedy plus the Shaddoll Beast, but here I'm actually not going to be able to search off the Tragedy because I have no more targets. I forgot I didn't I sided out my second Quem. So now I go Branded Retribution to get the Branded in red so I can get back my only Aluber. So this is the downside of running only one Aluber. Maybe I should go back to 2 Aluber. I do love 2 Aluber, but honestly in this kind of build I want to be resolving the Dracotail cards a bit more than the Branded cards, so this is fine. And I have a pretty loaded hand between the Eclipse deployment, red, and then opening, so I'm doing pretty well. I do go into Fusion deployment here to get the the Cartesia by revealing the Grand Guignol, so I can dodge like Widow Anchor since I know he has it. And then he goes into Lemniscate here, which I feel like was a misplay because like Cartesia I'm just able to like completely, like this was definitely a big misplay by him because he's just going to bounce my Cartesia, which I have in Albaz in the graveyard, so I'm going to be able to special summon in the Albaz again. I don't think that was going to be any sort of difference if he saved the Lemniscate, to be fair. Like, maybe. Because here I can go Branded in red and go for the Aluber. I don't end up active or fusing here because I want to normal summon it. And now I can trigger the Cartesia to special summon it back since I have an Albaz in the graveyard. And then I get to normal summon the Aluber to then get out the Branded Fusion. I still have Branded White in the pocket too, if we can get to that. And I go Branded Fusion. That's going to go unchecked. I go send the Cartesia plus the Albaz since I already have the Lubellion. I could have sent the Malulu to bridge into Dracotail cards. I was thinking about doing that. I probably could have done that, honestly. But that's okay. I go for the Albion. This line worked, and then Albion will banish the Mercurier plus the Albaz, because, yeah, the Mercurier gets me to Kit, so that was my... I felt like this was just a better line, and then I go into Lubellion 1, discard the opening for cost, chainlink 2 Mercurier, so I can search out the Spriggan's Kit, and then Lubellion's going to get me to the Mirror Jade. Mirror Jade's just so good against Striker, so I always recommend it, and here I go into the Lubellion, activate the Branded Lost this time before I fuse, and then I go Mirror Jade effect to try to bait out the Ray, because when a Mirror Jade hits the board, a Ray kind of has to do its thing, or else you can just trigger Mirror Jade. That's also where I think I misplayed last game. I should have just like banished like the Link when I had the chance, or the Ray, one of the two with Mirror Jade. And now I go send the Renbrum. since I already have Branded in Red and Retribution out of rotation, so like it's the next best thing for an interruption for the grind game next turn, and I don't have a Quem in rotation, so he does chain the Ray here, and then Ray's going to be able to go into the 0, and then 0 effect is going to be able to tribute itself for the... Or sorry, he's going to summon out the 0, but I get to banish it off of the Mirror Jade, so I'm just playing this very well. Like, he would have been able to really mess up my board a little bit, but I was able to, you know, that's why you like, he should have, this is why he should have went priority Ray into the 0 before, when my Mirror Jade hit the board, right? That's why I should have, right? Like, we both misplayed, but I just, like, made good on it, and then I can go to the Kit here, since I already have a Albaz Fusion, I get to special summon it. And then Kit just gets the Branded in white here. And you guys see how much I use Branded in white? It's actually just a staple for me. I'm never cutting this card again. It's just, it lets you push so many more times with Branded because it gives you like a free Chaos Star Source on top of your Mirror Jade pushes, which just breaks any board, right? So now I just am under Branded Lost. I get to search out... if I had a second Mercury, I'd search that out, but I don't, and he doesn't have a Nibiru, but he does have a Duraswarm, so we're gonna be able to deal with it, though, because I do attack here with my highest attack. This is playing around Abystial, by the way, attacking with your highest attack, and here, on the Chaos Star Source, he chains it so that I have to crash it. He takes the 3000, chains on the Chaos Star Source, banishes the Tragedy, which was another misplay on my end. I should have done this before. I should have done Tragedy before Battlefield phase to reset the Branded in red, so learn from my mistakes. And then he puts a Duraswarm in attack position, so I just crashed the Chaos Star Source here because I still have enough damage on board, even if he, no matter what he gets rid of, because if he gets rid of the Lubalion, I still have enough to do 5k. If he gets rid of the Aluber, I still have enough to do 5k. So at this point, I just have game. So he gets rid of the Lubalion, and I do 18, 17 plus 15, which is exactly 3,200, my friends. So that was a fun game. That game one was really insane. I just feel like I definitely misplayed by not like sending the Ido off of the Grand Guignol, and then because obviously my trap just checks a called by at that point, so it's really just have a droplet. That was my bad. And then also there was a few different mistakes in the gameplay that I pointed out. Hopefully for you guys to kind of learn the grind game a bit more with Branded, how to grind against decks like Striker, which you can definitely still see. It just got top 8 at, I think, Euros or something like that. So yeah. If you guys like this gameplay, let me know down below. Do you guys want to see more rogue gameplay, or do you guys want to see more gameplay against meta decks? Let me know down below. And what was your favorite part of the video? If this video gets 100 likes, we will do another follow-up gameplay against another deck in this Justice Hunters Yu-Gi-Oh meta that we're traversing and learning how to swiftly 2-0 with Branded Dracotail. And also, I hope that the people who aren't even playing Branded Dracotail or Dracotail still find use out of this video, because this video series, because we go over the plays and just like what these decks do, so, and good choke points. So with that being said, appreciate the support. Subscribe today. We're on the road to 20,000 subscribers. Love you guys. Have a great day. Bye now.